Close the self inside the self. Find the self which is inside the self. Find the heart which is inside the heart. Find the inner heart inside the heart and close it. Close your heart, close the self, close that which is you inside yourself. Close your business, close your shop, close your life, close the self inside yourself. Close your heart, fall asleep, fall into your own beingness, the beingness that don't need a mind or a perception for it to be experienced. The self, the true self, is in some sense only the experience of our own beingness. The experience of the self is that which we call the self. The self is the experience of that which we call the self. And the self is just an experiential reality in the region of the chest. Close your heart inside the heart. Find the inner heart inside the heart and close it and embrace it and caress it and hold it and give it the safety that it needs. See the self behind the self. You have two selves, one self which is in front of yourself. The background self is the real you, the true you. See that self and embrace the self which stands in front of it, which means you as an incarnation. You as a person, you as an incarnation, stands in front of a true background self that envelops you in awareness. Close the self in front of the self. Let the background self give nourishment and safety and security to the self that you were and the self that you are when you are awake. Fall asleep. Fall into your own beingness. Fall into that which you experience without your mind. Fall into that which you can experience only when your heart self. The heart self in you is your heart's way of experiencing the self itself. The heart self in you is your heart's own way of experiencing the true self within you. The way that your heart self wants to communicate with the self is a love affair inside yourself. Let your relationship be the relationship between your heart self and yourself itself. The relationship between your heart and that which you are. The relationship between the heart inside the self and that which the self represents as an experiential reality, as the beingness that you experience, and especially experience with the heart self, with the heart self itself. Amen. Close everything so that you can only be resting inside your own beingness, in safety, in security, in that which is only beingness inside the beingness itself. Close the heart into the heart. Close the inner heart inside the heart. close that heart, close the inner heart, and let that inner heart receive the self. Let the inner heart receive the self as the mother self, the father self. Let the inner heart receive the self as a mother self, a father self. Close the heart and let it receive the self as nourishment, as safety, as security, as confirmation of existence in the right domain, in the right way, in the right modality. Close the heart inside the heart. Close the inner heart inside the heart. Close the self inside the self. See the self behind the self. Let the self behind the self take care of and protect the self that stands in front of the real, true background self. You are the self in front of the self which is behind the self. You are in front of God. The self which is in front of God is you. Your self behind your own self is that which God is. Receive the background self into your own self. Close the self and let the self be closed so that you can experience the fruit of your own beingness, which is the experiential reality, the experience itself of that which it is to experience our own self. Close the self into itself. Close the self into itself. Let the self fall into itself. Let the self inside the human heart fall into itself inside the inner heart.